It is Tuesday, all you Minties. That means it is time to take an advanced look at some of these trades coming out from Marvel Comics this week. So, let's get started. Before getting started, a huge thank you to David Gabriel and the folks at Marvel for sending us advanced copies of these books. These books are due out in the direct market and book market on February 1st or 2nd, depending on where you get your books. So what we're looking at here are a couple of Epic collections, a brand new complete collection, reprints of Captain America the Truth, this new deluxe edition for Wolverine. We're going to talk about exactly what it is here in a second, and then of course the Mighty Marvel Masterworks. I always leave timestamps in the description of the video so you can jump around if you're curious just about a couple of books, or in case you don't want any spoilers at all. And honestly, as far as spoilers, the only book I'm going to be talking about just a little bit of spoilers and basically the premise of is the Moon Knight book. So let's get started. Let's talk about Doctor Strange, Mighty Marvel Masterworks Volume 1. Kicking off with Doctor Strange, Mighty Marvel Masterworks Volume 1. So this is the standard edition cover, my wonderful daughter, Miss Lydia, because we're reviewing these. That's right, we're bringing back the family reviews, and we're going to do Doctor Strange. Back by popular demand, you all have been asking. My daughter has the direct market cover. So this collects pretty much the exact same thing as the Epic collection. It's really cool that how they're making these almost mapped out. They're a little bit thinner than the Epics, but this one here has the exact same content as the Epic. So it collects Strange Tales 110 and 111, 114 to 141, and Amazing Spider-Man Annual Number 1. So it's the first appearance of Stephen Strange, first appearance of Nightmare, Clea, Dormammu, Baron Mordo, the Ancient One, all these characters that have played a big part in Doctor Strange's life. And, you know, they're pumping this out, they're putting out the movies. So they're putting this particular collection out, they're putting out the omnibus editions, and I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's a movie coming out with Benedict Cumberbatch. So I'm excited to see what my daughters thought about this. I hope they mention the art. I'm not even going to ask them. Because the art was one of the things, even as a kid, that stood out to me, how crazy it got, especially when you got into the Eternity storyline or the Dormammu dimension-hopping story arc here. But this book, like all the other Mighty Marvel Masterworks, retails for $15.99. It has 176 pages. As far as the extras in the back, not as many as the Epic collections. As a matter of fact, just 2 little pages of extras, or 1 page front and back. Wolverine, the deluxe edition. This is the Claremont and Miller, but honestly, Paul Smith should have been credited there too. So what exactly is this? People have been asking what the deluxe edition is. And practically it's just the 4-issue miniseries, which we've seen collected over and over again in trade paperback format, as well as hardcovers. And they added issues 172 and 173 of Uncanny X-Men, which take place immediately after the 4-issue miniseries by Claremont and Miller. So the book is $19.99. It's 160 pages. And, you know, people might be asking, wait, what? Why do this? Don't they have enough printings of this? Isn't it already collected in Epic Collection? Isn't it already collected in omnibus editions? Yes, it is. But I think the 4-issue miniseries of Wolverine is kind of like their Watchmen or Sandman. They always have to have it in print. They always have to have it accessible to new readers, and not every new reader wants to spend $100 on an omnibus or $40, $45 on an Epic collection. So this is a little cheaper, and it collects one of the greatest Wolverine stories ever. And of course, it's the one where he travels to Japan. And you get to see this Ronin side of Wolverine that you hardly got to see during his run in Claremont's Uncanny. And of course, you've got this breathtaking artwork here by Frank Miller. But not to take away the spotlight from Paul Smith, directly following those 2 issues, or those 4 issues miniseries, is the 2 issues part of From the Ashes. And you have artwork in here from Paul Smith. This is pretty much the outcome of the 4-issue miniseries, what ends up really happening to Wolverine and Mariko. There are some extras back here, and I'm so glad they did this, because one of my favorite things for classic X-Men to do is take this cover right here to issue 173. This is drawn by Paul Smith, but in the classic X-Men version, they flipped it, so it's Wolverine chasing Rogue, and this is drawn by Adam Hughes. So the extras are back here. You have original art pages like this amazing spread page. Some of the covers are in here. And this is a house ad for the miniseries. Some of the intros from the various trade paperbacks all the way in the 80s. This is the one that I used to have for years to let my friends borrow because I could never let them borrow the original issues. This is the McNiven cover there. This is a reprint of Wolverine by Claremont and Miller, but it's covered by Alan Davis, Mark Farmer. Here's the classics. Trade paperback covers, hardcover covers, recolored for the hardcover collection that came out in 2013, and the 2006 trade paperback. So like I said, this is more for somebody that's wanting to read an introduction to the character of Wolverine. Finally, back in print, we have Captain America Truth, collecting Truth, Red, White, and Black, issues 1 through 7. So you have 2 covers, but everything else is identical, the spines and the back. The book retails for $24.99. Here, let's take a look at what this is about. So this is written by Robert Morales. It's drawn by Kyle Baker. And as this was coming out, I remember Kyle Baker's art getting some criticism. So Kyle Baker, he's a cartoonist, he's a comic book artist, he did the relaunch of Plastic Man. So I was really excited for this series. I think I understood the problem that people had, though, because the series is about something that happened in the past previously. Before the super soldier serum went into Steve Rogers, they tested out this serum on different African-American soldiers, about 300 of them. So it's like a take on the Tuskegee Airmen. So it's an experimental thing that was happening back then. And it's really cool because it's historical fiction, of course, but there are a lot of things that Morales added in here that were part of history. As a matter of fact, as I was reading this miniseries, I think this came out in 2003, if I'm not mistaken, 2002, 2003. I learned quite a lot about what was going on during this time in America and in the armed forces. And a lot of it happened to be true. So this does collect the 7-issue miniseries. But let's go back to what I was saying about the art. I think when this came out, it's such a serious story, right? Experimenting a drug on African-American soldiers. A lot of them ended up dying. And to have this cartoony look to it, I think people were upset about it because they wanted something like this, as a matter of fact, like Joe Quesada's. This was in their house ad. But after reading this, like a few times, I can actually see it fit the tone of the story. The way that he draws the characters. Yes, they look cartoony, but it kind of makes sense. But anyway, I understand if it's not for you, because cartoony artwork is not for everybody. So it is the story of Isaiah Bradley. It's a character that has shown up in the MCU, so probably was a good time to reprint this. And it's pretty much his legacy he leaves behind during these atrocities that were happening in World War II. And when I say atrocities, this does have a parental guidance, and there's some horrible imagery in here. And just as a fair warning, I mean, this isn't your average Marvel comic book. This does have some mature themes, so just expect some of that. Don't expect it to be hokey or tongue-in-cheek. There's some horrible things that you see in this book. Cartoony artwork or non-cartoony artwork, it doesn't matter. The images are still there, and some of the images are embedded into my head forever. But it is the story of Isaiah, who becomes the super soldier, the very first experimental super soldier. So it's a little bit of a retcon with the history of Captain America. And as a matter of fact, I think they wanted to make this outside of the Marvel Universe, but then they decided it's such an important story that it should be part of continuity. And it is, because eventually, I mean, this leads into Young Avengers, if not for Isaiah. So the book has 168 pages, retailing for $24.99. Let's see if there's anything extra in the back. I am censoring that final page because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but the appendixes are here. And I think these were at the end of each comic book telling you the history behind these things, like the passage or the math, which is what each of the chapters are called. So in case you're wanting to know how much of the book actually happened, how much of this is historical fiction and how much of it is actually accurate, you can go in the back because he actually did the research and he cited his sources. Here are all the spines of all the books coming out this week. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and ring that bell for notifications. Moon Knight, the complete collection. This is by Brian Michael Bendis and Alex MALEEV. That is the exact same creative team that brought us Daredevil. So, This run right here is a very divisive run. It's a run that a lot of people love, a lot of people don't care for. And I will tell you why. And this is when I have to talk a little bit about a spoiler. So I'm just going to give you the premise of this particular run of Moon Knight. So I see a lot of new people that have never read Moon Knight that love this run. This was like their first run of Moon Knight, and they read it basically because they enjoyed Daredevil. They wanted to see the same creative team tackle a character they weren't familiar with. And at the time, Moon Knight's title had just been canceled, so I can see that. Okay, that's if you've never read it. If you are familiar with the character of Mark Spector, this is a big scratch of the head, because there are things that are happening here that feels like this is a different type of character, and I'll explain why without going too much into detail. So you have the character of Mark Spector, and if you're familiar with him, he has what some would call dissociative identity disorder, what most of us call in the 80s multiple personalities. So thank you, Melanie, for updating me on what the term is now called. But in this, it's a lot more than that. I remember when this was advertised, this is the picture that you saw, and it was something along the lines of like the Everyman Avenger or the Every Avenger. So the story behind this is that Mark Spector is now an executive producer in LA making a TV show, and he gets approached by the new Avengers. These guys right here. Wolverine, Captain America, and Spider-Man. Well, there's a little bit of twist to that, because what it is that they're not actually there. They're just figments of his imagination, or rather, they are parts of his personality. They are in his head. So those conversations that took place with them didn't really take place in the outside world. They're just taking place in his head. As a matter of fact, whenever he goes into a fight, this is Moon Knight fighting. He's harnessing his Spider-Man abilities, mimicking Spider-Man's fighting stances and the way that he fights. And then there's a whole argument inside of Mark Spector's head, like, look, the kid is getting his ass kicked. Let me in there, and it's Wolverine, like, I need to be tagged in. And then Wolverine comes out, claws out. Well, he doesn't really have claws because it's still Mark Spector. So that's the type of Moon Knight that this is. It's a different take on the character, by far. Reads more like a Taskmaster in a way, that he can mimic people's abilities, like throwing a shield, or, fighting like he's got web slingers, and fighting like he's got claws. You also have the appearance of a character here known as Echo, who appeared in the pages of Daredevil through David Mack, and I think it was Joe Quesada. Then eventually Brian Michael Bendis used her in his run. And there is a mystery villain that is behind all these things happening in LA. But that's practically the premise of this 12-issue run. So, just in case, you've never read Moon Knight, this is this is different than every other Moon Knight comic out there. This is not like what to expect from every Moon Knight comic. Is it a good entry to Moon Knight? It's a good entry to a comic book that's about a gentleman that suffers from dissociative identity disorder to a interesting extreme. The book has 288 pages and retails for $29.99. Let's look in the back for some extras. So here we have some variant covers. It's been released in 2 smaller trade paperbacks and 2 small hardcovers, and in 1 oversized hardcover. But I'm always curious to know what people thought of this run. Because like I said, I think people are divided whether they enjoy it or not. The Wrath of Odin got a new printing. This is volume 3 of Thor, and it's been printed before. Here's my original copy right here, and the copy from Marvel that they just sent me. I think this one's printed at the Solisco printer, and my original copy was printed in Indiana, I want to say. Yeah, right here. The LSC Communications in Kendall, Indiana. So the colors are a little bit darker on the cover here in the newer printing, and the book is just a slightly bit thinner than the original printing, and I mean slightly, not very much at all. But let's take a look in here and see what this book is. This is volume 3 of The Mighty Thor, and the book collects Thor 131 to 153 as well as annual number 2. So believe it or not, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee are still kicking all kinds of ass in this particular book right here, introducing new characters. I mean, they've already introduced a ton of characters already, but in this, they still keep introducing new characters. You have the secret of this young lady right here, who was Jane Foster's roommate. This is Tana Nile, who is a colonizer, and you can find out what that is when she tells Thor the truth about her and her people. You have more stories of the Warriors 3 from the Tales of Asgard. So you have Volstagg, Fandral, and Hogun back there. And also teaming up, of course, with a younger Thor. You have the introduction of Ego, the living planet. And I want to say that's one of the creepiest endings. Yeah, right here. Look at that face. Jack Kirby, man, just experimenting with some creepiness, like realism there. Photos, and then art on photos. And then, of course, the actual introduction of Ego, the living planet. But they weren't done. I mean, they were still introducing other characters in here. You have the Wrecker being introduced through these pages. You have Ulik, the big troll, introduced through these pages. This is an interesting story arc right here. This is where Thor and Jane Foster decide, he's going to take her to Asgard, meet his father for the first time. And, he wants to marry her. He wants to be with her forever. So his father does him a solid and turns her into a goddess. He makes her immortal. So for a little bit, Jane Foster's running around like an Asgardian god, or goddess rather. And you can find out how that story turns and what ends up happening to Jane Foster, because as you probably know, that marriage never really happened. And you still have Jack Kirby providing most of the artwork in here. You have the inks of Vince Colletta and also Bill Everett. They're the ones that are inking this particular story. You get to see Thor come back to Earth a lot more. He leaves Asgard for a while, comes back to Earth. He's reunited with this young lady there, Lady Sif. There's Ulik right there. I've always been a big fan of the way that Ulik is drawn. You see a fight between Kang and his growing man against Thor. His growing man, that was the dude's name, okay? Now, during this time, it's important to also note that this is when Donald Blake turned into Thor. Thor and Donald Blake were almost two separate entities. All of that will change in the next volume, I promise, when there's probably one of the earliest retcons in comic book history, outside of the appearance of Captain America in Avengers #4. I thought that particular issue of Thor was at 158, I think. And that does change the connection between Donald Blake and Odin's son there. Now, the Tales of Asgard does end in this particular collection, and I think it was 147 might be the final issue with the Tales of Asgard. There's the Wrecker's first appearance, but I think it's replaced by the Inhumans. That's what it was, the Inhumans backup stories. So in here, you're going to see the return of other characters like Hela. You're going to see the return of the Destroyer here, the return of Balder, and all these other characters that have been appearing, as well as new characters introduced to the mythos of Thor. But like I was saying, in the next volume, you're going to see a big change. And like I said, I think it's issue 158, where everything changes for Thor and Donald Blake. And of course, what's a Thor story without Loki? Come on! You just can't get away from Loki if you're telling a Thor story. The book has 456 pages. It does retail for $49.99. There's not that many extras in the back. There's only just about 4 or 5 unused pages, unused covers right there. There's the Wrecker. It's a photo stat for the colors, I think. And the Bulletins page. Then the Marvel Masterworks Mighty Thor Volume 5 trade paperback cover. Last but certainly not least, Conan Chronicles. This is Volume 8 of the Conan Chronicles Blood in His Wake. And this collects the final issues of the ongoing series of Conan at Dark Horse Comics. So I assume, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that this will be the final volume of Conan in epic format from the Dark Horse era. So part of the Conan Chronicles line. Fred Van Lente, Colin Bunn, names I've talked about quite often on the channel. But this collects Conan the Avenger 20 through 25. Funny that he ended up joining the Avengers later on, the Savage Avengers. And Conan the Slayer 1 through 12. So 20 through 25 of Conan the Avenger. This is written by Fred Van Lente. And this is practically the story of this young queen who is replaced by her sister, Salome, who is a witch. And the only person that knows about this is the captain of the Kuaran Royal Guard. And of course, that happens to be Conan. Now Conan is left crucified here by these people that have turned on him and the kingdom, and now it's his job to avenge the real queen, if she may be alive still out there. I've never read these stories, so it's a lot of fun to go back and read these for the first time. The thing that I enjoyed about it the most, though, is holy crap, Brian Ching is an amazing artist. I said that the last time I talked about this particular era of Conan. He's a freaking awesome artist. Like, I really dig how sketchy his art looks. He reminds me a lot of, like, Mark Silvestri or Sean Murphy. And he has, like, an anime feel to his art, too. Kind of like Sean Murphy, honestly. He reminds me more of Sean Murphy. It's not clear and crisp. It's sketchy. It's not defined, but I love it. I think his art is gorgeous, and his women are beautiful. And this particular story, like, you are going to find mature content in here, whether it's violence, right? There's very small nudity in here. Don't be looking for nudity in these books and expect to find, boobies, because you're going to find Conan's butt instead. There's a couple of chapters in this right here to Conan the Slayer where he's just walking around in the nude. My dude is walking around fighting in the nude just for a couple of chapters. This one here, this particular story was okay compared to the previous one. I guess I was expecting a little bit more from Cullen Bunn, but it is still a fun Conan story. It's just him. He gets shacked up with this group of villains, this Kozaki, and the chief wants to mate with him. This big giant woman. I liked where that ended, because it's the only way that a Conan book could end. So this book has 432 pages. Like I said, graphic as hell when it comes to some of the violence. $44.99. Let's look at the extras in the back. Oh, by the way, one thing I didn't note is the art. So Brian Ching does most of the artwork for Conan the Avenger. And then you have Jose Luis right here doing some of the fill-in art. He does, I think, 2 issues. And then Sergio Davila does most of the artwork back here for Conan the Slayer. Now, let's look at the extras. There's an afterword by Aaron Walker for Conan the Avenger number 25. You have the 30th anniversary variant here by Mark Schultz. And this is a San Diego Comic-Con variant by Rafael Albuquerque. I really hope one day they give us these books in omnibus format to continue the Kurt Busiek, then the Tim Truman stuff, then the Fred Van Lente stuff, the Brian Wood era, and to wrap it up with this, just to have all of Conan in omnibus format. I know some people are like, I'm just so tired of Conan. Yeah, some of us aren't. We love this stuff, and the more, the better. I wanted to show one of the, right here. A couple of the covers in here are by Tom Grindberg, who I have loved ever since I saw him in the pages of that Silver Surfer Thor crossover. He has this Frazetta Mignola look to his art, and I think this is just a prime example. Love his covers, and I want to see him do some internal artwork. But that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They pride themselves on packaging your books so they arrive safely in an excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. Check out the bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. CGN is excited to announce that they are now taking pre-orders. They're making it easier for you to ensure that you don't miss out on the hottest releases. CGN is currently running a special promotion for your Minties. If you're a first-time customer, let them know that you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you'll receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. This promotion is valid for U.S. customers only. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount and quality shipping and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content and page count of each of these books. Let me know in the comments down below which one interests you. Are you getting the reprint of the Thor Epic Collection? Are you getting Conan in this Epic Collection format and hoping that one day Marvel will print out those Dark Horse books in omnibus formats like they did with the Kurt Busiek run? And what you thought of Moon Knight, or if you're going to pick up Wolverine, or if you know somebody you're going to gift it to, and what you think of the mighty Marvel Masterworks Doctor Strange. So stay tuned for that, because my daughters and I are going to go back and start bringing back those family reviews for the mighty Marvel Masterworks. This was the Uncanny Omar. If you have any more questions, leave your questions down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. We are on Spreadshop and on Patreon. Amazing ways to support the channel. And thank you so much to our existing patrons. More importantly, everyone, stay healthy and stay safe out there. Much love.